What's going on, guys? My name is Dane Carba here from youngstbonus.com, and today we're going to preview the Bulls and Blazers game on Friday. I have with me Avi Sini from Bulls by the Horns. How's it going, Avi?
Pretty good. How are you doing today?
Doing good. And I also have Sean Hiken here from USA Today.
Hey.
How's it going? All right,
Good.
guys. Well, let's kick things off. The first thing I want to talk about is Derrick Rose. He's sort of been a little bit rusty lately. He's taking more shots than he's scoring. Avi, why don't you tell me a little bit about what his return has been like?
It's been pretty up and down so far. There have been times when Rose has shown his flashes of brilliance that he used to display before he got injured. One that immediately comes to mind is the first game against the Pacers when he froze Roy Hibbert on a stutter step hesitation move. But aside from those parts, he's been showing some rust when it comes to his touch around the rim. There are times when he makes his adjustments when a defender comes up. He overcompensates rather than barely moving the ball over to the right to get it off with his right hand. Kind of swings the ball and kind of puts too much power into the shot. So it's been up and down, but he's displayed that he can perform to the level he used to perform at. So it's just a matter of time it's a matter of letting him have some time to get back into that form. So pretty
Sure.
much.
And Sean, you're actually in Chicago right now.
I am.
What have you seen about how he's sort of struggling to get to the line? I'm seeing he's not really shooting that many free throws. It's really weird for him.
Well, he just hasn't been driving to the basket that much. He's been taking more long twos and more threes than he has. The last game of theirs that I went to was against the Pacers, the second game that they won, and he was 6 of 10 from the 3-point line, and it was, he scored 20 points, and it was, it was like sort of back to the Rose of old, but not really. It was sort of back to the Rose of old in the sense that he was playing really well, but he still isn't really driving to the basket at all, and that explosiveness is, it's not that it's not there, it's just sort of, I guess maybe just the confidence isn't there to go to it often, or maybe I guess in that game he was playing against Roy Hibbert, so if you have Roy Hibbert in the paint, it's maybe not a good idea to drive, and
Yeah.
that's I guess it's a lot of it can be sort of matchup dependent, but at the same time it might just be a confidence thing, and I will say that this just sort of proves that he was right to not come back last year, because if he looks this rusty and this not like himself after having this much time to come back, how do you think he would have looked last year if he'd come back?
Yeah, trying to make a late run playoffs would not have been pretty, probably. So we all knew that, I think.
Probably would have lost the first round against the Nets if he had played.
The other thing, Sean, that we have is, Jimmy Butler is not going to play in this game. He's out with a toe injury, and that's sort of an issue, not only because Butler is a useful offensive weapon, but he's also a lockdown defender as well. Thibodeau's scheme really, is a team scheme, but Portland has so much offensive firepower on the wing. How do you think the Bulls are going to be able to compensate? Who are they going to end up starting, and what guard lineups might we see, especially on defense?
Well, I would imagine they're probably going to start the 2-point guard lineup with Rose and Kirk Heinrich, and then still bring Mike Dunleavy off the bench. If they want to go a little bit bigger, they might go with Dunleavy, but I would expect them to start a Rose Heinrich backcourt.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And Avi, as far as the bench goes, how is Dunleavy going to really fill the role against a Portland bench that's been pretty good offensively, to be perfectly honest? I mean, probably the last 4 or 5 games, really, during this winning streak, Mo Williams and Darrell Wright have really worked well, and even Lillard has played the off-guard spot. How good is Dunleavy in the scheme of defense?
Dunleavy's coming along. Thibodeau's scheme is a little bit more difficult to pick up from time to time for certain players. So for him, he's still kind of acclimating to it in a full NBA speed. At full NBA speed, so that way he can kind of contribute to the team. So he has been spotty. We've seen him allow his defenders to get away on screens from time to time, or just completely lose his man and kind of help too much in the paint with Carlos Boozer and Joakim Noah. So he's coming along, definitely. But tonight, or for the Blazers games, there's definitely going to be some concern as far as defending on the wings go with how Portland shoots the ball and everything.
And if we'll remember back to last season, it took Marco Bellinelli some time to figure out Thibodeau's defensive scheme too, so it's not really surprising that Dunleavy has it's been has had a little bit of growing pains so far.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. And speaking of defense, Portland is running this scheme where it's pretty unique. They're not allowing anybody on the three-point line, and they're hedging two posts sort of diagonally across the lane. It's called ice, and they're going to basically try to deny the paint. What that means is they're going to give up a lot of, on purpose, they're going to give up a lot of 15 to 18-foot jumpers. How does that really work into how Chicago's offense has worked this year? Avi, I'll start with you.
Well, this year Chicago's they say that they're running the read and react offense, but as far as I can tell, it's kind of the same thing. They're moving the ball around, trying to find the open shot, whether that be a three-pointer, an open lane to cut into, pick and roll, whatever it may be. But the problem is this year, for whatever reason, the Bulls are actually not shooting the ball well at all, especially from three-point range, where they're only shooting about 34% on the season. So what's ended up happening in quite a few of the past games is, rather than take an open three-pointer, Luol Deng or Derrick Rose or Jimmy Butler will pass on the open three-pointer and try to drive into the basket. Against Portland's defense, I don't know how well that's going to work because, as you said, they're kind of preventing the three-pointer and preventing people from going into the paint and trying to force teams in between 15 to 18 feet range. So it'll be interesting to see because also the Bulls haven't performed entirely too well in terms of mid-range jumpers. Rose hasn't played well. I believe he's shooting somewhere low 30% in the mid-range, while Deng is shooting about a 34% in that range last time I checked. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out against Portland's defense.
Honestly, it wouldn't even be the worst thing in the world for the Blazers to concede some three-pointers to Chicago because they haven't really been shooting the ball that well from beyond the arc outside of a few games here and there. Rose will have a game where he'll go 6 of 10 and then he'll go 1 of 7 the next game. And then Luol Deng, I don't think has shot the three that well. And Jimmy Butler is out. He's one of the guys who can shoot the three, and he's out. Dunleavy's shot has been sort of inconsistent to start the season. If you force them into a lot of threes, as long as they're not wide open threes, if they can still contest them, then if this defensive scheme where they try to force a lot of mid-range shots, obviously you'd rather have them take the mid-range shots because then if they make them, you only get 2 points instead of 3. But even against this team, this isn't, it's not like they're the Warriors or something where you just can't let them shoot threes whatsoever.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how, if for some reason Chicago ends up doing what the Nets did and basically catching fire from mid-range in the first quarter, it could be ugly. Portland, it's sort of weird looking at tape and watching them, Damian Lillard be right under somebody's elbow, right under somebody's chin, 4 feet from the arc. It's really strange to watch, and especially if he goes over that screen, what he's really doing is kind of sagging and he ends up playing the passing lane rather than helping out and recovering. It ends up sort of being this wall that they put together with the first post player. So whether or not Chicago can shoot well from mid-range, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Let's talk about matchups a little bit. And I think for me, I'm going to start with the Blazers, and it's going to be their pick-and-roll defense against the Bulls. The Bulls may not be great from three, but they have one of the best penetrators in the game in Derrick Rose. He may be rusty, but Portland's found themselves out of a couple opportunities this year when they've had either Robin Lopez or Joel Freeland get in trouble, in foul trouble. Robin Lopez gets in foul trouble on offensive screens a lot of times, and that actually makes his 3 defensive fouls a lot worse. So, but if Rose decides to just start going at Lopez and he starts drawing in those fouls, we may see maybe some kind of change and adjustment, and actually some bench players come on the floor. Joel Freeland may have to play some minutes. So, what about you guys? I'll start with you. Why don't you give me a matchup for today's game?
Well, I think the matchup on the perimeter between Nicholas Batum and Luol Deng is going to be one to watch because, Deng is obviously one of the best defenders in the league, and Batum has sort of not just been scoring, but he's been sort of filling up the stat sheet all over the place this season. He's been shooting pretty well from beyond the arc, just like Matthews and Lillard have, but he's also been passing really well. And so having a defender like Deng up against him, I think it's going to be sort of a test for him. This is really going to be a test for the whole Blazers team because except for San Antonio, all these 8 wins on this streak haven't really come against really elite teams.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and Chicago's coming off a back-to-back. That'll be interesting since Portland's going to be at home, and the last time they had a back-to-back at home against a good team was the Rockets, and they got destroyed. Of course, Dwight Howard's on that team, but Derrick Rose is a former MVP, so he's on this team too. So, Avi, why don't you give me a matchup for today's game?
I'm going to go with the super obvious Derrick Rose versus Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard has picked up where he left off last year. He's scoring like crazy, playing very efficiently, not making many mistakes with the ball as far as I've seen. I haven't seen too many Blazers games so far this season, but he's looked really good this year. Coming back from his injury, we've discussed it already, Derrick Rose has some rust, and he does look rusty on defense. He has looked about half a step slow against quite a few opponents this year. So whether or not Derrick Rose can stay in front of Damian Lillard is going to be an interesting thing for me to watch in tonight's game. And also, if Derrick Rose can match Damian Lillard's scoring, whether it be efficiently or not, obviously, we've discussed it, Portland's defense is fairly tough and tries to prevent teams from getting into the paint, and a lot of Derrick Rose's game is based on that aspect. So if Derrick Rose can kind of get into the paint and match Damian Lillard's scoring output, then Chicago may probably have a chance in this next game.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money. People look at Portland's points in the paint for their games, and they sort of say, "Oh, they're not that good. They're not that good." Really, a lot of the points in the paint that Portland is giving up is off the break, and people are getting open lay-ins. So, and if you're going to give up, like last week, Portland gave up 45% of their turnovers in the fourth quarter alone, for letting teams climb back in the game. So if you're going to do that, of course, you're going to have open layups, and that's going to hurt your points in the paint. But the idea is to push them out of it and give them even 7-foot, 8-foot fadeaways. So if Derrick Rose can get to the paint, then this might be a real issue for the Blazers at home. I think it's going to be a real test game for both teams. Chicago has so many injuries, and Derrick Rose is coming back. And for Portland, are they really 10-2, or are they really what their record says they are? So it should be interesting. So, well, thanks for coming on, you guys. I appreciate you helping out with the game preview tonight.
Yeah, anytime.